Dan and Amy, what is up? Well, Saturday Night Live actually stumbled into a fun skit or two on Saturday night. The Bubble City, where progressive leftists can live, was a good one. And, Amy, I'll let you have your final salvo with Alec Baldwin.
Thank you. Well, SNL Open, started with Alec Baldwin because he's back and he's going to be here for the, foreseeable future. And he depicted a panicked Trump realizing that he has to govern now, and first started with deportation.
The Democrats are already pushing back on our Illegal Immigration Act because they say finding 11 million illegal immigrants is going to be hard.
Impossible, probably.
And then they say it's going to be even harder to deport them.
So maybe let's not do it.
Don't do it?
Yeah. Scrap it.
Scrap it.
Scrapped.
And then he went on and did, Obamacare and, of course, the special prosecutor for Hillary Clinton.
Also, they're going to make it hard for us to hire a special prosecutor to put Hillary in jail.
Then don't do it.
Don't do it.
Scrap it. She didn't do anything. Scrapped.
You're not laughing at all.
It's because I have a sense of humor. Here's the thing. We'll see about that, because I expect the first 100 days of the Trump administration to be carpe diem, to be chock full of activity. I think they're going to move expeditiously on a range of topics that were discussed in the campaign. They may not take exactly the form that was described in these various policy sectors during the campaign, but I don't get the sense that there's going to be the effort to enlist Elizabeth Warren's support for what Republicans intend to do with respect to Obamacare, with respect to the war against radical Islamic terror, with respect to a range of issues, including prosecutions where they're appropriate, like, for example, IRS. And also, remember who is in the Oval Office, because this isn't a one-man job. The cabinet's taking shape. The policy circle in the Oval Office has taken shape with Priebus, Bannon, and Conway. And Steve Bannon, a much talked about senior advisor to Donald Trump, from Breitbart, gave an interesting interview to Kim Strauss over the weekend in the Wall Street Journal. And I wanted to take one thing he said because it has relevance to the Illinois Republican Party and what it hasn't done. Kim Strauss writes of Bannon, his affinity for Reince Priebus, who he calls, quote unquote, a terrific partner, seems real. And Bannon says bluntly that the Trump victory would not have been possible without the RNC, though he adds with the rare chuckle that the RNC was a little anxious at times. Mr. Bannon brushes off concerns that there will be a White House power struggle between him and Mr. Priebus, given that Mr. Trump says the two men will be equal partners. It's interesting because Priebus is very close to Paul Ryan, and Bannon and Breitbart have been very critical of Paul Ryan. But here's the thing. They came together, divided the labor, both played their respective roles in the Trump presidential campaign, and they were successful. And that's the opposite model that's been followed by the Republican Party here, where the establishment has jettisoned conservatives. They've been resistant to partnerships, and that includes, frankly, to some extent, the Rauner administration, and it has been to their detriment. If you can have people that have differences of opinion on particular Republican policymakers, on particular policies, yet still recognize that the partnership is the key ingredient to success politically and by extension policy-wise, then you could be in a position to do something. And if you don't recognize that, then you can be Illinois, where you're in a position to mostly complain about Madigan and not much else. Just a little instruction out there for all the deep thinkers in the Republican Party in this state. Bannon and Priebus. You couldn't have two more different people coming together to play their respective roles in furtherance of the greater good, the overall mission. Maybe if we could get some adulthood in this state, we wouldn't be in the super minority in the Senate and a significant minority in the House, losing constitutional officers, losing congressmen, as we did this cycle, while the rest of the Rust Belt went Trump and enjoys conservative Republican governors and senators. Just a thought. And for more thoughts on these and other topics, we're pleased to be joined by our friend. He is Congressman Peter Roskam from Illinois 6th District. Peter, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you guys. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, why don't we start with the IRS, since this has been a particular focus of yours over the last couple of years, waiting for an administration that may actually prosecute the clear wrongdoing that occurred at the IRS, waiting for an impeachment of the IRS commissioner and to revisit Lois Lerner, who has invoked the Fifth. So with Jeff Sessions as the presumptive attorney general, what is your level of optimism that we're going to see some justice imposed on IRS?
If you're Lois Lerner, your world's fundamentally shifted on election night, because my calculation of the statute of limitations for Lois Lerner's crimes is that they are still open. In other words, into the early, into this year, the Department of Justice, if they choose, according to my calculation, would be able to move forward with a case against Lois Lerner. And remember, this was a case that the House laid out. The House made a specific criminal prosecution referral to the Department of Justice. It was completely rejected. This is where Barack Obama said, there was not a whiff of any criminal wrongdoing and so forth. And so I think Lois Lerner, in that case, in the evaluation of that case, is going to be front and center in a new Justice Department. They've got to look at the facts to see how they can do it, but I would recommend they look at it very, very closely.
And with Koskinen, I don't want him to just disappear into that good night. I want him to be impeached. What's his fate?
I hear you. I think that I think most people are going to be looking to the president-elect in terms of what his disposition is on Koskinen. The shelf life on John Koskinen is pretty short. But I take your point that in terms of the impunity and so forth, there's a larger principle to be laid out. The question is, how much does the president-elect, how much time does the administration want to use on Capitol Hill and the bandwidth and so forth and the stage? Do they want it to be Koskinen, or do they want it to be their policies? My hunch is they would prefer it to be their policies.
Now, over the weekend, Donald Trump met with 20 possible cabinet members. He was, vetting certain people, and Mitt Romney was one of them for Secretary of State. Do you see that happening? Is that a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. Is it a probability? I don't think so. But listen, I'm reading the same stuff that you're reading. So I think Mitt Romney's got the disposition and the demeanor to be a terrific Secretary of State. That said, there's a lot of people that are probably much, much closer to Trump who have that same capacity, and that's such a premier position within an administration that I would be surprised if it were offered to Mitt Romney.
Yeah, but you don't understand, Peter. Amy is in love with Mitt Romney. She's not in love with those other people. So that's why.
You just want to look at the man for the next
and I trust
years.
him. I mean, I've supported him, and I want him to be Secretary of State. I think that's be a perfect role. And his friends said over the weekend that he's interested in the job. So now it's just.
He said that.
He's got a clear world view. He understands America's role in the world. He understands how American might and diplomacy fit together, and how economic strength drives things. And he would command respect and attention around the world. So it'd be a great choice.
Getting back to Department of Justice and the appointment of U.S. attorneys, we spoke with former U.S. Attorney Fred Foreman earlier in the show, and the state of affairs in Illinois with 2 Democrat U.S. senators. He recalled back when he was appointed that you had 2 Democrat senators in the early 90s, Paul Simon and Alan Dixon, that it kind of fell to the minority leader at the time, Bob Michel, in conjunction with the Republican delegation from the state of Illinois to make recommendations to a Republican president. Do you have any sense of, is it likely to follow that kind of line under a Trump administration where, for example, you would have a lot of influence in the selection of U.S. attorneys, for example, the one for the Northern District of Illinois?
Yeah, this is new territory for me, and I think it's new territory for a lot of people, because in the past we've either had, we've had a Republican senator or, some other dynamic in place. So to the extent that the new administration is going to be looking for guidance from the Republican delegation, we'll work clearly and closely with them to give them good advice and good suggestions on people that they should consider.
With respect to how the selections that Trump has made so far, your colleague Mike Pompeo, Republican congressman from Kansas for CIA, and Lieutenant General Mike Flynn for NSA, and Jeff Sessions, and the rumors about either perhaps Jim Mattis or former Virginia Senator Jim Webb for Secretary of Defense. I mean, are you liking the names that have been leveled up as well as those that are being rumored about?
I am liking those names a lot, and here's why. I think they bring a seriousness and a demeanor and a disposition to understanding the nature of the Islamic threat, for example, around the world. I texted my kids when I got the news that Mike Pompeo was going to be named, as the nominee for director of the CIA, and I just said, you can rest easier. I mean, this is a guy, I know him. I served with him. I served with him on the Benghazi committee. He serves on the intelligence committee. He's a West Pointer. He knows what he's talking about. And his disposition and his worldview is going to be like, let's do a great job. Let's get the intelligence that they need in order to win this war. So I feel good about those names and the direction of them. And I think that it manifests itself then as a campaign promise that the president-elect is coming quick to deliver on.
All right. He is Congressman Peter Roskam from the 6th Congressional District in the Western Suburbs. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. As always, appreciate it.
Thanksgiving, guys.
Same to you. Thanks,
You
Peter.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro gobble gobble answer line.